Hello, Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Hello. I guess I'll call us to order. We're waiting on a couple of folks, but welcome everybody. I guess I'll start off by thanking Art. Art and I are going to step aside for new leaders tomorrow. So thanks to Art for serving as my VP, and looking forward to passing along the gavel to Jennifer and the new crew. So
it was a very stressful job for me. Every time you were on the road or said there was lightning out your way, I thought, uh-oh, but so it all worked out.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to serve that role one more time. Not that we're expecting any weather, but my internet service is always a little bit.
Yeah.
Never sure. Have we heard from Nathan and Jennifer?
I had not heard from either of them.
Okay. And I know that our first agenda item is approval of the minutes, but quickly looking around, I couldn't find a set of minutes for our last meeting. Do you know whether Nathan produced those or?
Yeah, I'll resend those right now.
Okay.
We don't have a chat in this, do we? Okay.
I think we learned from Audrey that chat is disabled for these public meetings for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a quorum to approve the minutes? I'm sorry. Yeah.
We only have 2 out of the 4 of us, so.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do any action items unless you have a quorum.
Right. Well, let me make sure I get them first of all, in case somebody does show up.
Here comes Nathan.
Okay, good.
Sorry, guys, I had a hard time finding the link, but I eventually sorted it out. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello. We are waiting for Jennifer, but in the meantime, we're looking for Joe to send us a copy of minutes.
Yeah, I thought I sent out an executive committee package.
It was in the first email you sent.
Okay, well, I just resent the minutes to all 4 of you.
Okay.
Audrey, do you want a copy?
Not necessary unless there's something I need to look at.
Tom, do you have them yet?
No, I don't. Not sure why.
I'll send you one too and see who gets there first.
Might be quicker if I read them out loud.
Are they short? If they're short, maybe that is the way to go.
They're not that short.
Well, I just sent them to you as well, so.
Okay, while we're waiting, I'll just go through some of it so you keep your reading to a minimum. Trustees present were Tom, Jennifer, and Art. Nathan was absent for the last executive committee. Staff were me and Zach. Others present, none. The meeting was brought to order and you approved the minutes. Tom presented the chairman's report, and Tom, you talked about the passing of Dr. Dorsey and the resolution. Slate of officers have been developed, which we'll vote on tomorrow. I gave an update on the General Assembly activity that we knew to date, which of course has been changed. Well, that basically everything we talked about was approved. Jennifer did the treasurer's report. Full funding was received from Martinsville Henry County. Equipment costs were up due to savings accrued from reduced operations, and overall the budget was solid. I gave a director's report. Basically, if things behind the scenes are progressing well. Mariah Pedology identified numerous undescribed species in the collection. Flight exhibit was ongoing. Capital projects progressed. So we finished the VMH elevator and in the progress of replacing the Douglas Avenue roof. Education programs were very active online, and we talked about the Wayne Theater. Old business, there are three things. Advancement reports contains good details of staff board and customer diversity, which was an update to the old format. Dr. Benzing asked how long the new website has been up, and asked that we had a tour, which we're prepared to give tomorrow morning. A new board member from the VMH Foundation Board of Directors is available. Just FYI, subsequently, that person has been voted onto the foundation board. That's Dr. Parrott from Waynesboro. There were no announcements, and Tom adjourned the meeting at 4:40. I don't think
Okay.
there's controversial in there.
No, it doesn't sound like it, and I'm satisfied, so I'm willing to take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And I'll
Nathan, you wanna
second it.
second that. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye, so
Aye.
I think we got minutes.
Hi.
Tom,
Yeah,
Jennifer just emailed, and she's running behind and will either join us late or we'll have to wait till tomorrow.
okay. Oh, and the minutes just came into my inbox, so thank you.
All right.
So I guess we'll have to wait on the treasurer's report. I don't have a lot to share, I guess, with the executive committee in terms of a chairman's report. I'm prepared tomorrow to talk a little bit about my activities since the last quarterly meeting. I did attend the Jefferson Awards and the ceremony for Barry and Bruce, the tree planting ceremony. And of course, I was there for the drive-through event that we had in Waynesboro, Treasures from the Vault, and enjoyed that. So I'll talk a little bit about those things. And then I just wanted to, spend a little time, since it's my last meeting as chair, recapping what I see happening over the past 2 years in my role in that tenure. So I'm going to spend some time just kind of going through some highlights there. And of course, the changes that we saw as a result of the pandemic in the way that we conduct business. And then the exciting things that are happening with regard to the advancement of the Waynesboro project, as well as the stuff that's going on regarding renovation of the Douglas Avenue facility. I did receive a couple of communications that I wanted to share with the board. One is a letter from Barry's sister. And so I'll read that, thanking us for the resolution that we had last time, recognizing Barry's service. And then also I had some communication with Audrey about our fiscal duties as trustees and whether or not the audits that are done periodically, I guess annually, are something that should come to the attention of the board, and whether or not we need to act on those in any way. So I guess the conclusion is that there's no reason for us to act on them, but it might be good to share that information with the board.
Tom, are you wanting to discuss that in closed session with council, or are you just looking for general kind of information?
No. I was just gonna share basically, if it's okay, in open session, what you told me about the fiscal duties
Sure.
as trustees.
Yeah, and I think Joe
And
could also
not
speak
really
about
entertain
the-
a lot of discussion about that or take any action. Or anything.
Yeah, I would say that if there is going to be a lot of discussion about the parameters or things you might want to do or anything like that, I'd probably recommend a closed session motion. And if we can just be prepared for that on the fly if we need to be, I just
Okay.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
but of course the specific schedule for audits, regular state audits and that kind of thing would be something that that Joe would be able to speak to as executive director.
Yeah, and I think Joe shared a letter kind of summarizing the last audit and sent that out to the board as well. So we can just highlight that as I mentioned it.
Tom, if
Yeah.
I just ask, Zach, do you remember the procedure for going into executive session?
Closed session?
Closed session, yes.
As far as closed session, I think last time what we had done is I had to give host controls to Tom for him to take control of the meeting. All staff left at that point, and so of course the YouTube feed went away as well.
Right.
When you were done with the closed session, you had I forgot how, but staff was contacted again to rejoin the meeting. Tom let us in, and we restarted the live session on YouTube.
Yeah, I texted everyone to rejoin.
Okay. Do
Right.
you have a means to notify the public that the board has gone into closed session?
Yeah, well, okay, so I can't remember exactly what we did. I think we mentioned that that we were going into closed session during the beforehand, and we can announce on the YouTube feed itself that the board is
Okay.
in closed session.
That's fine, as long as there's just a way that anybody viewing the YouTube feed or logging on, in the mid-meeting sees, that the meeting isn't over, that the board is currently in closed session, that's sufficient.
Okay.
Some of my clients do it by having 2 parallel Zoom meetings going on at the same time. There's lots of different ways to handle it, but there does have to be a contemporaneous notification to the public.
Okay.
They're in closed session right now, so they'll be back in a minute, the battle card or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hopefully it won't be necessary, but it's good to have that available just in case.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Thanks, Zach.
And I have the language for making a motion if needed, so I'm all set there.
Do you have the motion for legal advice or do you?
Motion for closed session.
Okay, but you have to, we actually have to state a basis and we have to state the reason that we're going into session. So if it actually comes up that we're going to need that, I'm going to have to give you more specific language for your motion because we have to state with particularity the basis for going in, the specific code section that we're using and what we're discussing when we go. Then and we have to stick to that so that when we come out, each individual member can certify that that's what we kept our agenda to. So hopefully it won't be necessary, but if it looks like that's going to happen, I'll just have some language waiting in the wings, and I'll just go ahead and tell you what the motion will be, and someone will make that motion.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think what I have is the language that we've used in the past for annual performance review, so that would be replaced with something else.
Yeah, annual performance reviews are under the personnel exception. This would be
Right.
under the legal advice exception, which is actually a separate
Okay,
section of the code.
got it. Well, that's really all I had. And our next thing was a treasurer's report. I guess we have that in our files, and do we want to wait? I guess, did you say Jennifer is going to come late?
It's honestly, it sounded like she wasn't going to be able to make it. That was her first
Okay.
thing. That if she could, she'd turn up late.
Okay, well, we'll, I guess we'll take your executive director's report at this point.
Okay. Let's go ahead and bring it up. All right, so what I'm planning on telling the full board tomorrow, I don't have anything to report on that I wouldn't report to the full board. I was just going to walk through where we're at with the strategic plan. We are a year into the release of the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. And I think things are progressing most satisfactorily. With the establishment of the research centers, we've decided to hold off any real announcement on those because Dr. Pritchard, Dr. Bassett, and our staff archaeologist, Maddie Bassett, are also new. They're still kind of getting their research program up and running. So, and how they're going to mesh with education and exhibits and whatnot, we're going to go ahead and just kind of play that by ear for the moment when we kind of formalize these research centers. The next part was the Douglas Avenue rehab. It's going along fine. It just has the glacial pace of getting state approval. All the plans are in place. The contractor's about ready to get the architect is about ready to get a contractor. What I just learned this afternoon was that the material that was slated to be purchased by the architect had a 75-mile-an-hour wind rating, but that Douglas Avenue, I guess very much like buildings can sit in a floodplain of a 100-year flood, how many feet above they sit. Douglas Avenue apparently is in a maximum wind zone of 115, so they are in the process of rectifying that before they make the purchase. So hopefully very soon they will get that done. Then we can discuss using maintenance reserve for HVAC, electric, and plumbing, probably phased. And then, of course, the last part of this section of the strategic plan is to obtain reaccreditation for AAM. We'll form the ad hoc reaccreditation committee in 2023. As far as the last 4 points, early childhood center is going to be dependent upon the rehab of Douglas, so we can move the library. So when Douglas is up to speed, Ryan has already found the mechanism with which to sell the compactors to other state agencies. So we'll be ready to do that. G.N.S. Adams Education Pavilion because it's another capital project. It's another one that's moving glacially. So we're all set. Carter and Burton are working with Department of General Services, again, just to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's. So that could begin the physical moving of earth here behind the building will progress. With that, we have also begun to look at some other treetop canopy concepts, ones in which the ideas that have already been tried and true could be applied here. So I'm developing a list of architects who've developed and installed these things. There's actually one not far from here in North Carolina that did one in, I want to say, it was either Vermont or New Hampshire. It looks pretty good, and frankly said, it kind of looks very similar to what I had in mind for us. That said, new trustee Mark Buss, he travels from Richmond to Atlanta on a regular basis for business, and I already kind of chatted with him informally that maybe he could stop over at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens and actually walk through theirs and come back with some opinions and any further information he can find. The last part of the strategic plan and kind of some of our biggest news here is that we, of course, have full funding for the detailed planning process of VMNH Waynesboro in the budget. So we will find what that amount will be closer to 1 July, and we will, as soon as possible, put out an RFP to hire an architect and subsequent exhibit design firm and so forth. So Tom, I'll let you, when I'm done here, I guess we can talk about, the role of the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee in the selection of the architect. To the design process, though, I had proposed at the last Waynesboro Advocacy Committee meeting to develop 5 distinctive teams. So there'd be building design, exhibit design, visitor services, lab and green technology, and then lastly, landscape design. These would each be quarterbacked by a staff member, and then there would be core team members that would be placed under each of these teams. We would then invite all members of the Board of Trustees and the Foundation Board to participate in any of the meetings of any of the team. The idea here is to make sure that we have the strongest voice possible going into the design process, because we expect whoever we hire to take the pre-planning document, and we're going to look at it closely, what worked, what didn't. Really, the purpose of the pre-planning was to provide proof of concept, to provide a confirmation of estimated costs and so forth. But we still have plenty of room for design, particularly with the exhibits and landscape and so forth. So these teams will each have sort of a fundamental responsibility there. 6th team will consist of myself and Jonathan Martin. Myself as executive director, Jonathan as not just our CFO, but our Virginia certified construction officer. So we would be attending most, if not all, the meetings to ensure that there's good communication amongst the different team members, and that everything is being done in such a way that, each of the main sections of design are done in support of one another. So that's pretty much where we stand with the strategic plan. The last thing that I'll mention is the ESCO project, the energy companies. Just a quick refresher, we have the $500,000 from Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. We settled on Siemens as the contractor that would do the work on the building. So we've had a number of meetings. Jonathan Martin has been spearheading this. They have looked at things such as insulation in some areas of the building, places where LED technology can come to play. They want to make some modifications to the HVAC system, including its filtration system, being now that it is a post-pandemic period or getting close to a post-pandemic period. And lastly, there will be a solar array, and they're calculating the size of that solar array. And just to remind everyone, there is no real direct cost to VMNH. The grant provides the seed money. And then when they design the system, they come up with a design that creates a guaranteed number of dollars of savings every year that offsets our utility bill. We are then owing them a certain portion of those savings. So in the end, we come out with net savings every year and pay the modifications off after 10 or 15 years. So we should be getting those numbers fairly soon. And what I have learned is that once everything is lined up, the process of modifying the building is very quick. It's a matter of like something like 3 to 5 months, depending on what they're going to do. So I think everything's in great shape. We're going to roll through the end of the fiscal year very nicely. You probably saw we didn't do a finance report, but we're actually ahead of budget as of March 31st. And so we're in pretty good shape. And I'll just tell you what I told the foundation board was that my outlook on the future a year ago was not nearly as rosy as things are right now. So I think we should be very happy to be where we're at in my estimation. So Tom, that's my report, and I'll turn things back over to you.
Yeah, so the one thing I guess you mentioned, what would be the ongoing role of the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee? I've actually asked Carol to report out since they won't be there tomorrow, and to put in front of the board the recommendation that the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee serve advisory to you and your staff, throughout the process of the selection and, negotiations with the architectural firm after July 1. So we'll make that official, assuming the board approves.
All right.
A couple of other items just before we go on to the old business, about tomorrow's meeting. I guess, Nathan, I shared with you a updated roll call, so you'll be prepared to give us, a roll call attendance and then any roll call votes. Did you get that?
Let me double check that. You just sent that directly to my email.
I did, yeah. It's just an updated version of that Excel spreadsheet that we had before with our new board members, and of course, Dr. Goversey no longer.
Yeah, I see that from this morning. That's excellent. Thank you. That'll help me make sure
Okay,
it
great,
doesn't
yeah.
look like we have any additional pronunciation issues. So that's promising. Thank you.
Yeah, we got 2 Burnett's now, so we got to keep those straight.
Okay, I'll make sure to add the first name on that one. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other thing, Joe, that I wanted to bring up with you is you recommended that Jackson give a presentation to the board at some point regarding his work, as he did with the foundation board. I thought that was really good.
Yeah,
Well,
But I was wondering whether we could do that at the end after we're done with our business, and just offer that if people wanted to stay around, there would be a presentation following our adjournment.
He's giving a presentation tomorrow at the RNC committee.
Okay.
It's kind of a duplication, or would you prefer it in front of the full board? I think we should do one or the other, not both. And I know he's prepared to do the RNC committee.
Okay, so maybe I was just confused, Joe, by your note. If he just does it to the RNC, that's fine.
Well, no, I mean, my thought was that if he did it gave a presentation to research and collections, he could be a little deeper for you all. That was my thought, because I coached him that, especially when he gave it to the foundation, it's a specific audience, mostly not science oriented, specifically not systematics oriented. So that's why I'd suggested to do both. So, but I'll leave it to what you two would like. He can give it at the end. That's fine.
As I was thinking about it, it might be a nice tradition to start to get into, where we, offer an opportunity after our business to hear a presentation by one of our curators or, somebody else that talks about the science that's going on. I think Art would be supportive of this idea. The science that's going on and kind of educates the board a little bit about those activities. And it would be optional, we would be done with our business, but it would just be maybe a nice little add-on.
Yeah, I could set that up each time. We used to, actually, we had a tradition of doing field trips during on-site board meetings. So we would go to a particular lab, education facility, or see an exhibit update. So, we could mix and match, whatever. So that would be no problem. And I could broaden it out if it was the board's pleasure. It would probably mostly be curatorial staff, but it could also be, say, building operations, education outreach opportunities, and so forth. So I'm good with that. So what I'm hearing is, I'm sorry?
What do you think, Art?
Where do you want to
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is I'll tell Jackson to hold off on research and collections, and he'll give his slides.
Actually, I'd prefer it the other way. If we're going to cut one out, that we cut out the full meeting, because I had planned to hear what he had to say. But if otherwise, let's just do both. I just think that we repeat a lot of things between the committee meetings. There's no reason to go over this again at the full board meeting. So let's plan a little more carefully and go accordingly. I would like him to give a full presentation as he was asked to do already for the research and collections meeting. And if you would like to have him do, a summary at the end of the full board meeting, that's fine. I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, that's fine with me. And let's just keep it brief at the end of the board meeting, like you did with the foundation,
Yeah.
as it's audience dependent.
Because I had planned to summarize whatever he had to say at the meeting as part of my report. So I can just leave that out and let him say let him summarize himself. But like I say, I'm just finding out about this now.
Well, so was I actually. So this is all fairly new within the last couple of days that we're talking about doing this. So
That's why we have these meetings, I suppose.
that's right. Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up here so we're all on the same page. And I think, I'd love to hear him talk, and I've heard him talk at the foundation already. So I'll hear him 3 times because I'll hear him at the research and collections and then again at the end of our board meeting. But that's fine. I think the advantage to doing it in the full board is that you get maybe the ear of some people that wouldn't otherwise hear this. So.
Well, and I'd be happy just to forego my report, which is available to everyone already, and let him have that time. So it's in an appropriate place, right front and center as part of the research and collections, unless you want to do it ad hoc at the end. I'm happy to go either way.
I think it's less part of our business than it is informative and, kind of enjoyable part of the meeting. So I would like to just close the business meeting and then have the presentation. I think that's the way I would like to do it.
Okay.
So you can let everybody know that when you give your report that Jackson will be giving a presentation after we adjourn our meeting for those that are interested in sticking around for 5 or 10 minutes.
And I trust Jackson knows about this.
Well, I guess Joe will let him know.
Yep.
Or maybe he already knows. I'm just the last to know. So just let Jackson know. If he knows, fantastic.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else on the meeting tomorrow?
I sent you that resolution for Diane Clark in her retirement.
Yep. And I'll read that, as we said, after your executive director's report.
Right.
So old business, this actually, diversity, equity, inclusion is something we talked about before and is something that's come up in, I guess, strategic planning committee. And, Art, you made me aware of the article about the Science Museum and some of the challenges that they're facing in trying to become more inclusive. And also a reference to the One Virginia plan, which came out in February. And I just wanted to add that to our list of tools that we have, as we start to think about how to address this as a museum.
Well, the document that was circulated as part of this meeting, the diversity and equity and inclusion document, I'm gathering that was initiated before the Virginia one. And it seems to me that document, the museum document, should be revisited and incorporate the language directly from the statewide document. I think that would just make things a lot more sense. And the only reason I even thought of it is because I was reading through the definitions, and I have to say I was a little mystified as to the definitions and their sources, because they weren't readily available in the document. There were some entities referred to, but there were no links. And I tracked things down, and the definitions didn't quite track for me. And then I went through the Virginia one document. I thought, perfect, it's all there. There really isn't anything that we need to hash out. The state has put forth this document, and I think it would behoove us to revisit the museum document as soon as possible and incorporate the Virginia One document directly into it and go from there.
Yeah, I sat in on a meeting with I'm not going to remember the title, but the person in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the state of Virginia. And they basically gave us a heads up that we would be required to, each agency would be required to have a document. DCR actually was sort of the pilot case. So I guess they work closely with DCR. So we actually got their document, and I formed kind of a staff team to kind of put that together. And so, yeah, that was only meant to be a draft that we'd start to hash out, especially now that we have further input from the state. But just know that we are working on a document, and that while there's been no timeline, I think we're pretty far ahead of the game right now.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that going forward, that we should be careful with the definitions. One thing that struck me with the Virginia One document is everybody agreeing to what the terminology we're going to use and how they're defined. And using the the draft document, I found there wasn't a lot of consistency. And I think that moving forward, we should have, when we define these terms, we should do so in a positive, affirmative way. I know it could smack of semantics to some, but I think that when we define equity, for example, we should do it in a way that is building something, that's affirming something, rather than, taking something away, removing this. It could certainly be the secondary part of the definition, but I think that, whenever you're defining something of this importance in this area, I think we really need to be careful about how we, and thoughtful about how we define the very terms that we're going to be using this day forward, and do so, like I say, in a more positive way.
Oh, very good. Yeah, we'll continue to work on that, and we'll share the next draft with the strategic planning committee to go with the original charge.
Great.
Okay, great.
Under new business, there were a couple things that I wanted to bring up. One is, and this isn't a bridging agreement between the museum and the foundation. There's a reference to putting out a request for funding before the end of the fiscal year. And I think in the past that letter came from the chair of the Board of Trustees, but Joe, help me out here. I know Barry put out a letter. I think I've drafted a letter before regarding, what we see as our major initiatives in the coming year and what we're asking for the foundation to do.
Yeah, we've been kind of informal about that. We usually put together a list of just what we've called special projects over the years. So this is something we've shared with the board. And I don't know that all the time an actual letter was written, but we could certainly, start to make that a ongoing tradition, as the bridging agreement says.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to put that on paper so that we're all looking at the same request, because I think it's been unclear, and well, I guess whether or not it gets well communicated between the museum board and the foundation board, what our goals are for the coming year, like in terms of fundraising. And now that we have this next step in our Waynesboro campus project, what are we asking the foundation board to do regarding that in the coming year? Maybe nothing, but I want to be clear with them.
All right, so just as an operational thing, I'd suggest that we put special projects in front of the Board of Trustees, maybe under the chairman's report for each November meeting. And then we could have discussion, modify it, whatever. And then in between then and the February meetings, the board chair can submit a letter to the foundation president, which can then be on their February board and budget discussion.
But it refers to fiscal year, so isn't that July 1?
I'll have to take a look at that, but I think logistically, since that's when November is when the foundation board sees a draft budget for July 1st. So, I don't want to give, I don't see the value of giving them something after the fact, like after they've already developed the budget, then we supply to them a request for project.
Request.
So,
Okay.
I'll have to take a look at that, but I think logistically, just, as far as the timing of the meetings and the look at the draft, and then, so for instance, today, as you recall, the foundation board approved the next fiscal year budget.
So that has to, yeah, so our request has to time up with their fiscal year,
Which is the
or
same.
their budget process, really.
Yeah. I have to refresh my memory on this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're getting down the weeds here, but that document that I sent around, there's a section in there that describes this process. And that's what I wanted to just make sure we weren't missing anything on.
Well, it's a little more generalized, Tom. It does say the museum shall communicate to the foundation in a reasonable time prior to the end of the museum's fiscal year, different categories and or projects for which the museum needs funds. So again, I think if we discuss the next fiscal year's project goals and needs at the November meeting and get a letter to the president of the foundation board by the February meeting, that can help shape their draft budget. And then the foundation board can have discussion on that at their February meeting.
Okay.
And then they approve it at the May meeting. And then the new fiscal year comes around. So basically, again, the language is communicate in a reasonable time prior to the end of the museum's fiscal year. So that's about halfway through. Well, yeah, it's about halfway through.
Yeah, and that would, like you say, that would match better the foundation's process for their budget approval. And
yeah, if we give it to them, say at the end of the fiscal year, say May, they won't have time to modify and vote on the budgets. They meet at the same time we do.
And their budget sets targets for what they want to raise for particular projects. Is that right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we can provide guidance on, what we did the prior year, or if there are opportunities that would cause us to, say, increase the amount. So if there is a special grant opportunity that we saw coming, and we wanted to submit that through the foundation, we could ask for that.
Okay.
But normally what the foundation board raises their funds that become unrestricted funds to support museum and foundation activities are through the Discovery Fund, memberships, and then some various miscellaneous categories such as brick sales and similar things. So, but and then grants, as we traditionally have done, the majority of them have gone, the majority of what we might call the specialized grants, education and research, Christie for education, the curators for research, they're the ones that write and submit those. We do include those in the budget if they're anticipated, but I don't know that we've ever actually made a request from the Board of Trustees to the foundation that a particular grant proposal is written. But we can provide guidance on approximately what Discovery Fund memberships and so forth will produce. And from that, we can provide a reasonable request to the foundation for funding of certain, whether it's exhibit elements, education scholarships, or any sort of support that we see is going to really drive research and collections forward.
Well, I remember in the past, I think it was Barry came to the foundation board and said something like, we'd like you to raise $1 million in the next year, and that's kind of the way it got communicated, I think, just verbally.
Yep. Well, he challenged him.
Challenged them. Okay.
Yeah. the history there is that originally when this building was being opened, the foundation had committed to raising $1 million for an endowment. The return on the investment of that endowment would go to support museum exhibits. So special exhibits, change out exhibits, traveling exhibits, and the like. That never came to be. So we've since set up a plan where over the long term, we've grown a small endowment. It's up to, you saw the figure, Tom, it's around $20,000. So it's been something that's been growing slowly. Barry, just wanted to push him, and basically say that, yeah, you just need to go ahead and raise that $1 million. You just need to sit down and get it done. So
Yeah,
there was no real roadmap, and I don't even remember them saying we'll do it.
right.
So but
if I just wondered if we put a little bit finer point on what we're asking for, and then there could be
Yes.
negotiations on that, and it can be included in their budget process. I think that would make it a little smoother, the communication between the two boards.
So I give you a hypothetical example. If research and collections really wanted to say ramp up the dinosaur dig, just for instance, that's something that gets us a lot of goodwill. It gets us great specimens, reputation, student training, all these different things. We say we want money for a vehicle. We want to actually have a vehicle that's wrapped or whatever the idea is. That can be brought to the full board, who can then discuss it. And then in November, provide the list of what they want to the foundation board. And then the foundation has to decide if they have the capacity to raise that kind of money or not.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll keep that on the agenda then, I guess, for a coming meeting as we think ahead to November and February for actually putting these together. And the last item of new business that I had was just to discuss the process for your annual review. And I don't know that we need to go into closed session about this, but I did want to just say that I understand that when you put together your report of your activities for the year, we're planning to share that with the whole board of trustees, so that they're aware of what you're doing, and that it's a transparent process. And when we review that document and we come out with a recommendation, they all have access to that report. And I'm not sure whether that's always been the case or that's anything new, but for you, Joe, that might just guide how you prepare that report. It's going to be seen by the
Frankly
entire
said,
board.
yeah, I can't imagine it being any different, to be blunt.
Okay.
But I appreciate you letting me know.
And then I don't know if there was anything you particularly would like to see in that process changed or.
Well, yeah, of course, the last couple of years, a year and a half or so, have been so nuts that some of the requirements that the board had put in with the last modification of the director's review were just not going to happen. Because, so for instance, in the last iteration, it basically asked for museum attendance and Discovery Fund dollars and memberships to rise consistently at a 5% rate every year. And then the pandemic hit. So that's kind of gone out the window. That said, I don't know that I can basically tell you what wording I want, but I'm not sure how realistic that is. For one, there are things that I like to tell the staff to not worry about things you can't control, only worry about things you can control. And I can't control if someone reaches into their wallet and writes a check to the museum, but I can control getting a message to them. Certain quantitative measures that are more under my control would be reaching out to people that I would hope would support the Discovery Fund, whether they're board members, advisory board members, community members, businesses, whatever it is. And of course, I've got a staff at my disposal to help with that. I would like to see something evolve, even if it doesn't change this time, to something where we're measuring what I do. Now, that said, My performance in getting that communication out, how do you quantitatively measure that? Well, with the amount of money I bring in. So you can almost get into a circular argument there. So that's why I'm saying I don't know exactly what the best way to word that is. But while for instance with festivals, we were growing them for 3 years at an incredible rate, but I kept trying to tell people, hey, we don't have logarithmic growth forever. Right.
Right.
Eventually, there's got to be some plateauing here, but we're on a good trend. So I just want to be a little careful personally with hard percentages of increase year by year. Even if it was,
I will look at that template that we've used in the past and make some changes to it based upon that feedback. And one of the things that I've been thinking about too is how else to gather input for you about your strengths and so forth and weaknesses that you want to work on.
No, I understand. So one thing that might help would be like a 3-year rolling average in terms of looking at trends. 3-year, 5-year, 2-year, something like that. Hey, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be distracted, but I see Jackson across the way just turned his lights out. And so I'm trying to text that he doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
I still want to talk to him.
Yeah, no worries. Does anybody else have any comments about the process for the annual review? You realize that we're going to be doing this before the next board meeting. So we're going to be asking Joe to put together his report and send it out to the board for action on during our next board meeting. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
In what way?
I mean, what would you like the process to look like? Is there a deadline for when we get a template to Joe and when we ask for Joe to respond and how do we send that out to the full board? Is there anything that you think worked well last time or we need to revise from last time? I mean, you've done a couple of these with me, Art.
Yeah.
This is Nathan. I seem to recall, I don't know if it was last year or the year prior, was when there was discussion of the full board wanting to be able to review that report. So I feel like this piece of it will be new to anyone who doesn't have experience on the executive committee. So we might just want to provide them either some background or some guidance on terms of how the process usually works.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And it was just last year, I think, that it came up. You mean guidance for board members who aren't on the executive committee who haven't participated in this process in the past?
That's exactly right. Just kind of maybe an overview of how it has been done, at least as far as you all know, and then any particular things that all of us newbies should be paying attention to.
Okay. I'm just writing a note for myself.
Just to clarify, this is happening tomorrow or in August?
Well, the action is happening in August.
Okay.
But I'm anticipating, that we want to be doing work between now and our next board meeting and all be on the same page with regard to that. And so, as I said, that his report will go to all the board members before the next board meeting. It'll be part of the packet. And then at the next board meeting, we'll go into the closed session and
Right.
conduct our personnel business. So that's all. Let's see whether Joe comes back with word from Jackson.
The only reason I was questioning anything is because I feel like we do a lot of repetitious things sometimes. I think that if we want the full board to know, why don't we just have a presentation at the full board rather than taking up committee time for that? Not that there's other things we need the time for, but I figure let's hear it all once. But I'm all for promoting curators and their work at any and every opportunity. And I think it's more useful to do it in front of the full board than just in the R&C committee.
Did you catch up with Jackson? We were just waiting to hear.
Yeah, we're good.
Good. Okay.
Completely amenable.
Of course he
Great.
is.
No, but as I said earlier, I think it'd be a nice tradition to have a little presentation. I've been on other boards where, you do the business part of the meeting and people are, you got to through the business stuff. And then there's a presentation at the end that really people get excited about or interested in and maybe want to come to the meeting just for that,
Well, that's
So,
what I've tried.
everybody wants to come to hear the treasurer's report.
Well, that's what I've tried to do in the R&C committee.
Right.
Let the curators have their say, and then I can try and distill that, and between the report and that, get it to the full board. But it's much better coming directly from them if there's that opportunity.
And I think something short and sweet, highlights would be great. People can say, "Oh, did you know the museum's doing stuff with millipedes?" And what about these crazy millipedes? There's 600 unknown species and all this kind of thing.
Got to have pictures, because millipedes are cool.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people don't know.
All right. Yeah. I guess we're down to announcements. Anything for the good of the order?
This is informal. With the retirement of Diane Clark, our visitor services manager, we're in the middle of a search for a new visitor services manager. And we have a good collection, 50, 60 applicants. I think we're down to around a top 12. And so we're going to whittle that down farther. So it's a good thing, though, because, we had someone who really, with working closely with Brian, really solidly put the museum, store and cafe and other activities on a trend for becoming a profit center over time, particularly with the festival model, blended in very well with that. But are there new ways in which we can generate revenue through the store cafe concept? We have an online presence. And you'll get a tour of the website tomorrow during the advancement report. I think you asked about that at last executive board meeting.
Yep.
So we'll give a quick 5-minute tour tomorrow. But you'll see in the museum store, it's a few select items that are for sale online, but it's very passive. Can someone come and insert some new ideas into how we can move more merchandise? And, kind of combine the educational aspect of the things that we sell along with the idea of, making ends meet for ourselves. So, it's just information at this point, but we look forward to maybe at the August meeting introducing who we hired for that important position.
And that advancement report will be right after yours?
Traditionally, it's done during mine.
Yeah, okay.
I bring Ryan in during my report to go through advancement activities.
Good. I'm just making a note to myself. All right. I think if there are no other announcements, we are adjourned.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Or not.
Thanks, everybody. See you in the morning.
See you in the
Everyone,
morning.
tomorrow.
Thanks, Audrey.